know, Hans and I are here on our 12 acres developing our homestead. And one of the first things we did when we moved here is we purchased our layers. And we wanted to get those farm fresh eggs into the kitchen. And the first round we purchased, I believe it was 24 chickens, with the thought that maybe we could sell some of the eggs and we would share them with our kids. And, you know, 24 would be the perfect amount and we would preserve them. Well, we learned very quickly that 24 eggs coming into the kitchen where there's just the two of us, even with all those people helping us out with taking some of the eggs from us, it was still way too many. So the second time that we purchased chickens, we narrowed it down to 16 chickens. Well, that's still a lot of chickens. It's a lot less than what we had before, but 16 eggs is still a lot of eggs. But one of the reasons why we wanted to have 16 chickens with an overabundance of eggs is because we wanted to be able to preserve them. Now, during the spring and the summer, we have the abundance of farm fresh eggs. I mean, all the eggs we want to eat, we've got them right at our fingertips. But chickens stop laying, or they slow down, or they stop altogether as the daylight hours decrease. And you don't have the abundance of farm fresh eggs in your kitchen throughout the winter. For us, it's about the end of November, beginning December, all the way through March. And after you've enjoyed those delicious farm fresh eggs coming into your kitchen, it's very, very hard to go back to the store and purchase eggs there at the store. So I am really excited to bring to you guys the art of water glassing your eggs while you have that abundance coming into your kitchen, and you will have farm fresh eggs to last you all the way through winter. And if you calculate it right, you'll have just enough take you right through to the time when your chickens will start laying again. Now, water glassing is founded historically back in the years before there was electricity, before there was refrigeration. Everybody water glassed their eggs. That is the way they preserved it. So using this ancient preservation method, people are able to preserve their eggs for months. Some people have reported that their eggs are still good, fresh eggs. When they crack them, you can hardly tell the difference between a fresh egg and a water glassed egg for up to 2 years. So in this kitchen, water glassing is the perfect preservation method to solve the problem of that overabundance of eggs that hits your kitchen every spring. Now, there are different methods that you can use to water glass your eggs, but today I'm going to show you the quickest, the easiest, and the cheapest way to be able to preserve your eggs. I've already touched lightly on why we like to water glass our eggs, but I want to talk a little bit more about that. Let's talk about how a chicken cycle runs. A chicken needs a certain amount of daylight hours in order to produce an egg. So as the daylight, the hours decrease, as we get closer to fall and we start losing those daylight hours, a chicken is going to lay less and less eggs because they're not getting enough daylight in order to produce and lay an egg. Now, a lot of commercial, even homesteaders, a lot of people will use supplemental lighting. So the eggs that you get in the grocery store, those chickens are brought in, they're in big facilities where they never see the light of day. They're just inside these buildings and they have the lights on 24 hours a day. And they do that so a chicken's body thinks that there's sunlight all the time and they will produce an egg every 14 to 16 hours. And, you know, that way they can get more eggs out of a chicken. And here on our farm, we like to follow the template of how God designed nature. And if God designed a chicken to start slowing down and sometimes stop altogether from laying eggs during the shorter daylight hours, during those winter months, there must be a reason why he did that. Maybe the chicken needs a break. Maybe it's not good for their body to be laying an egg every 16 to 18 hours for their entire lifespan. And so we kind of like to follow that template. And so that is one of the reasons why we really want to preserve our eggs, so that we can continue having farm fresh eggs, but we can give the chickens the break that they're designed to be able to take. So we do not use supplemental lighting. We just go with whatever nature happens. That is what happens. Now, the time of year that we preserve most of our eggs is during the early spring, because just like the daylight hours, the length of daylight in a day affects a chicken's laying cycle, so does the heat. So as spring turns into summer and the temperatures heat up, they're still going to lay eggs. We still get a lot of eggs during the summer, but they might drop back just a little bit because the higher temperatures do affect them. So right in that early spring, in late March, April, May, when it's still beautiful spring, the days, the temperature is still a lot cooler, you're going to get a huge amount of eggs coming into your kitchen. You're going to, be getting pretty much 100%. However many chickens you have, you're going to be getting that many eggs. And so it's much more eggs than we could ever eat. And as the temperatures rise and it kind of slacks off a little bit and we're not getting as many eggs, then we're able to eat a lot more of the eggs that are coming into the kitchen. So in that beginning of the spring, when the temperatures are cooler and we have that overabundance, that is when I preserve most of my eggs, and I just tuck them away for when fall comes and the egg laying slows down and stops. I will have them. So, that beginning of spring, when that flush of eggs is coming in, that is the best time to start preserving your overabundant amount of eggs. Another reason why I love to preserve my eggs in the early spring is because there's not a lot of other harvesting and preservation going on. We've got our seeds in the ground, we've got our plants started, our garden is getting going, but nothing is coming in, or what is coming in, it's very minimal. It might be like salad greens or radishes or peas, stuff like that, but there's not a lot of abundance coming in yet. So I have that extra time where later on in the season, as I'm getting baskets and baskets of tomatoes that need to be canned, and just so much abundance coming in from the homestead. It's just another thing to try and water glass the eggs. So I do most of my preserving when things are kind of quiet and slow. What we are going to use to water glass our eggs is some hydrated lime. It will also be referred to as pickling lime. Now, the reason why we like to use hydrated lime instead of pickling lime is it's much more economical. The packages of pickling lime, they're pretty expensive, and they're just little tiny packages. And so you'll have to buy several packages throughout the season. We can pick up hydrated lime at your local hardware store. Our local hardware store didn't have them, and so we ended up actually going over to Home Depot, but a lot of the smaller hardware stores will have them. So if you check there and they don't, you can just go over to Home Depot or to Lowe's, and we bought a 50-pound bag for just under $11. A 50-pound bag, when you're only using an ounce at a time, that will probably last me my entire lifetime. That's gonna preserve a lot of eggs. So just that one-time purchase, go down to Home Depot, pick up a 50-pound bag of it, and store it in I have a big tote, just so it's, moisture-free in there, and I'm good to go for probably the rest of my life here on the homestead. Now, what I really love about water glassing eggs is these do not have to be in a cold storage. They don't have to be like in a special temperature. They don't have to go in the refrigerator. They can just be at room temperature. Now, of course, I've got an outdoor pantry, and the first year that I did these, I kept these out there in the outdoor pantry, and I kept them right by the door. And quite a few times I would leave the door open while I was working, and the sun would beat right in, and they were hitting the eggs. I didn't realize that was probably something that I shouldn't do, and my eggs did not preserve as well as I would have liked to. And I think a lot of that was due to the sunlight that was hitting the buckets. So while no, you don't have to have a special temperature controlled environment for them, you do need to think about how warm it is. Not like I probably wouldn't keep them out in the garage or in any outdoor structure, because they're just going to get really, really hot. And as we know, Heat degrades any type of food, like your canned food or your dehydrated food. Having excess heat, it is going to break down the food, and it's not going to be as viable of a place to store your food as somewhere that's a little bit cooler. So probably just something like in your house, because whatever your house is, I mean, you might not keep it really cold, the AC really low, but I mean, if it's fine for you, it's going to be fine for your eggs. So just keep them away from sunlight, maybe back in a closet, because the sunlight will, work against what you're trying to do with your eggs. Now, if you have a choice between two different places, choose the cooler one, because they will do better in a cooler environment. Right now we're in our travel trailer, but we are building and we're digging out a basement, and the basement is going to be so much cooler than the house because it's way down in the earth. So when we do move into that, I will probably choose to put my water glass eggs down in the basement versus just the house, because it is cooler down there. And so just choose the coolest place that you have, but don't become overly concerned about it. Now, with water glassing your eggs, there has been a noted success rate of 100% for 8 months. So basically what that's saying is whatever eggs you water glass for the first 8 months, there's pretty much 100% success rate of when you crack those eggs, they're still going to be good. They're going to look pretty much like a normal egg coming into the kitchen. And while yes, people have preserved them for up to 2 years and they've done really well, I'm not so concerned about that, because we have our chickens and the chickens are going to start laying again. Pretty much the max that I want to preserve my eggs is from maybe start a little bit early November through March. So, 5 months, 6 months at the most. I don't want to have a lot of water glassed eggs left over when the chickens start laying again. That happened to me last year. I had an entire bucket of eggs left when my chickens started laying again, and that was because we had so many chickens with that first round. I water glassed probably 4 of these buckets. That holds a lot of eggs, and it was just way too many eggs for us to even be able to eat over the winter. So then I really wanted to start eating the eggs that were coming in from the hen house, but I still had a whole bucket of eggs. So, I don't want to preserve more eggs than what I'm going to use. But I don't really need to worry about preserving them for longer than about that 5 month mark, because that's really the only period of time that the chickens are not laying. All right, so what do we need to water glass our eggs? You see, I have quite a few things here, but it really breaks down to hydrated lime, a bucket, and water, and of course your eggs. So let's talk. We've already talked about the hydrated lime. You know where to go get that. Let's talk about the vessel that you're going to use. It all depends on how many eggs you're going to be water glassing, what your storage looks like if you're just putting it on your pantry shelves and you want them to fit in a nice half a gallon to a gallon glass jars, that would work really good. I have a food grade plastic bucket here. Now I use this for making bread dough and putting in my refrigerator, and I keep it in there, but you could also use these for water glassing eggs. It's got a nice pop-on lid. But what I use generally is these big old huge 5-gallon buckets. This is a food grade bucket, so it works just perfectly. And I would love to see how many eggs fit in here. I might keep track of it this year as I'm filling it up and just see how many eggs are in here. I think as I was keeping track last year, I didn't count exactly, but it was somewhere in the 200 mark. So that's a lot of eggs. I have this lid pops on real nice. It's a gamma lid, and you don't have to have something special like that, but you just need to make sure that it has some sort of lid, number one, to protect the eggs, but you also don't want it to be open because the water will evaporate and you'll lose, the water will go down and then your eggs will be exposed. So you want to have whatever you use, you want to have it be covered. Then we will talk about water. If you're on city water and it's got, city water has a lot of chemicals, it has chlorine, it has a lot of things that we don't really want our eggs to be sitting in. So if you do have city water, I would suggest that you just go ahead and purchase some filtered water, even distilled water, to cover your eggs in. And then we will talk about the eggs now. All right, so the star of the show is our eggs. These are eggs I just brought in this morning. So these are very, very fresh eggs. You cannot use store-bought eggs. The reason for that is these eggs cannot be washed. When a chicken lays an egg, there is a covering, it's called the bloom. It is a covering that covers that egg, and it's kind of like a shell around your shell. It's a liquid, but then it dries on there and it fills in all the pores, and it protects the egg from any bacteria getting in. So if you took the egg and you washed it, you're removing the bloom from it. And now all of the pores on that egg, they're open, and bacteria can get in. They can go through the pores and they can get into your eggs and they can spoil your egg. That is why if you buy any eggs from the grocery store, they are in the refrigerator section and you need to keep them in the refrigerator. It's because they have been washed, that bloom has been removed, and now they're susceptible to bacteria being able to get in. So using a store-bought egg that has the bloom removed from washing it, and store-bought eggs are also, they're dipped in like a chemical solution, a chlorine solution, bleach, to further wash them, which is not necessary. It's actually, that's leaching into your egg. So a store-bought egg, if you were to take that and you were to put that in the solution, the outer covering, that bloom, has been removed. The pores are now open and they're going to be sucking up whatever. So they're going to be sucking up the solution. That solution is going to be going into your egg, and it's either going to make the egg go bad or it's going to make it not taste very good at all. And you don't really want to be consuming the hydrated lime solution. You don't want to have that inside your egg. So bottom line is, no store-bought eggs. If you're buying an egg from a farmer, you need to make sure, talk to him and say, do you wash your eggs first? Because using a washed egg will be a 100% failure rate. So don't even waste your time doing it. So just make sure that wherever you're purchasing them, if they are farm fresh, just make sure that they have not been washed. So when you bring your eggs in, whether you bring them in from the farmer's market or you get them out of your hen house, they need to be clean. You can't have any mess or mud or anything on them. They need to be completely clean. And like I said, you cannot wash them. Normally, I make this big bucket, just stack them up in there. But today for this tutorial, I'm going to go ahead and just make a ½ gallon jar. That's what I was saying. If you just have a pantry space, you don't have something that you could store something this big, and you have a lot of shelving, this will work really well too. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the hydrated lime right into the water. I have measured out a ½ gallon of water. Remember, filtered or distilled, just not tap water if you're on the city water. So we are just going to take the water, and I'm going to measure out my hydrated lime. Now this scale here, I love it because I can just stick my bowl right onto the scale and hit the button here, and it will balance it out so that now all it's going to be doing is measuring what I'm putting into the bowl. The measurement that you're going to want to use is, it's going to be 1 ounce of hydrated lime per quart of water. So this is a ½ gallon, so that would be 2 quarts. So you're going to want 2 ounces of hydrated lime in this jar. So just remember, it's 1 ounce of hydrated lime per quart of water. Now, that isn't measured like in a measuring cup. You need to do it by weight. So make sure that you have a scale and you can measure it out and get the exact weight of 1 ounce of hydrated lime. So you're just going to measure that out, and then you're going to dump it right into your water. So my bowl is not going to hold anything more than 1 ounce. So I've got 1 ounce here, and I'm going to add that in, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to measure one more ounce. So that'll give me the full 2 ounces, since I have 2 quarts of water. Oh, I think it's going to be, look at that. It was exactly the 2nd ounce. So, whoo, it's powdery. It's getting into my throat. So I'm just going to add that to this water. And, I'm going to grab a whisk, and I'm just going to stir it up. And that's all there is to making the solution. Now, if you're wondering what hydrated lime is, it is a natural product. It is not a synthetic chemical. It is generally, oyster shells or bones or limestone that has been burnt in a kiln, and then it has been hydrated with water. So that's all that hydrated lime is. It's very natural, and you don't have to worry about it being an unhealthy product to be soaking your eggs in. Now, this lime is very different from the lime you would find in the gardening section. What you would find over there would just be a ground up limestone. This is a completely different product. You're not going to want to look in the gardening section. You're going to want to go over to the building supply section. It's more of a product that like masons would use, like in masonry. It's a completely different product in a different part of the store. So I don't want you to head over, because a lot of us hear about, this, they think more about gardening, but you're going to want to head over to the building supply section at your hardware store or at Home Depot. Now, as you can see, it looks kind of milky, but this is well mixed in. It is just fine. This will settle. You will notice it as it's sitting in your jar. The hydrated lime will settle to the bottom. Don't worry about that at all. Don't try and mix it up and stir it. Once it's mixed up here and you pour it over your eggs, it will be just fine. Maybe adding hot water to try and dissolve it and make it, not float to the bottom. That's not going to help. You just need to leave it. This is perfectly fine. In fact, if you used hot water, that wouldn't be good for the eggs. So just room temperature water. It doesn't need to be cold. It doesn't need to be hot. Just whatever comes out of your faucet, and mix it up, and then you'll be able to start preserving your eggs. That is all there is to it. It's just really super easy. Now, before we continue and preserve these eggs, I want to invite you to subscribe and click that little bell so that you'll be notified every time I post. I actually bring a lot of really delicious recipes to my channel, but I also bring homesteading techniques, canning and fermenting. I'll be bringing dehydrating, preservation like water glassing your eggs, just a lot of really solid homesteading core things that you would need to know, along with just a big assortment of delicious recipes to use just whole farm fresh foods, whether you're going to the farmer's market or even the grocery store, or if you're bringing them in from your homestead. My recipes are centered around whole farm fresh organic products. So go ahead and subscribe and click that little bell so you don't miss anything that I bring. And if you have a friend who would be interested in this, don't forget to share this tutorial with them. And I would love it if you would give me a thumbs up. That just lets YouTube know that people are enjoying it, and they'll put it in front of more people. Now, what I have here is clean, fresh, unwashed eggs. Now, you might think, well, of course they're going to be clean coming in from the chicken coop, but a lot of times the chickens will go to the restroom on them, or during, especially in the early spring when there's a lot of rains, they'll be walking through the mud, and then they'll bring that into the nesting box. And so a lot of times my eggs actually are not very clean. And so as I'm bringing eggs in from the hen house, I'll kind of separate the very clean ones from the dirty ones. And I do other things. I mean, I'll go ahead and wash the dirty ones and use them in my cooking for breakfast, or I'll preserve them other ways, mainly freezing. I turn them into eggnog, all sorts of fun applications for eggs. So I kind of separate them. Now, I mean, you want your egg, if there's like a little shaving stuck to it, you can kind of pick that off. But even dry rubbing them to try and get a lot of it off, that is going to remove the bloom. So this egg, it came in from the hen house this clean. There might be a feather on it, and I'll just pick it off. But that's the extent that I will do to the eggs. I won't try and clean them off any further than that, because I do not want to disturb that protective bloom that is enclosing the egg. Now, if you're having a hard time with keeping your eggs clean, like if you have chickens yourself and a lot of your eggs are coming in not clean, there's a couple things. During certain times of the year, during the springtime, we change the bedding, the nesting boxes. We change the shavings out daily. We'll just kind of scoop out the mess out of it and throw that on the ground, and then we'll put fresh shavings. That really helps to clean them every day. But if your chicken run, if there's a lot of dirt and they're walking through the mud, you might want to consider sprinkling sand, some shavings down there, because it's kind of like as they're walking through what they would normally be in a rainy day. If there's a lot of dirt and mud, they'd be walking through that mud and tracking that into the nesting box. If it comes through sand or shavings, it's just kind of like a little doormat. Like it'll clean their feet off before they actually hop up into that nesting box. So, you know, several different techniques. If you're noticing your eggs are coming in very dirty, you probably just need to do more consistent housekeeping. And that will take care of a big problem. But, you know, not all of your eggs are going to come in clean. I would say that for the 16 eggs that I gather, I might get 8 or 9 or 10 that are good and clean, and the other 6 have something on them. So we just use those ones, and I just water glass all of the clean ones. Now remember that you can do this in any size of vessel that you want. And like I said, I normally do a 5-gallon bucket. And so once I put my solution into that bucket, it's pretty full, and then I'm just adding eggs in until it's filled up. So I'm having to put my hand down in there. The lime is very alkaline. It will dry your hands out. Just me working with the powder, my hands feel very, very dry right now. So you might want to consider just getting a rubber glove to put on your hand as you're taking the eggs and putting them down into the solution to just kind of protect your hands from that alkaline solution that you're going to be using. Now, as I'm packing this 1/2 gallon jar, I'm going to put my eggs down in the jar first and then pour the solution over it, because if I put the solution in it first, it will, and then try to put the egg in, it's going to overflow. Normally with the big 5-gallon bucket, it's a big opening, and so I can just dip my hand down in there and just arrange the eggs. But in something like this, I actually have to, I can't just toss the egg in because it would probably crack. I'm having to be careful just setting them in here like this before I put the solution in. It's best to put the egg in there. If you notice an egg, it gets narrower at the top. It's best to put it in upside down. That is the case with any kind of storage. When you put them into the egg carton, it's best to put them with the pointy side down. It will just keep your eggs better for longer to store them this way. When I'm putting them into the big 5-gallon bucket, and I'm only, like I put the solution in the big bucket, and then I lower the eggs down into it. If I only have a couple dozen eggs, that's a big area, and there's no way that they're all going to stand up. So I don't worry about it. I'm not religious about it. But if I can, as I add more and more eggs, and it is possible to do that, and if I can, I will store them with the little side down. So just too, when you put them, you know, in your egg carton, think about that as well. They will just preserve better and stay fresher for longer in that position. All right, so I'm about filled up. Let's see, there's a little feather on here. I'm going to just pick it off. Now, I wouldn't want to rub the feather off. Just pick it off and that'll be just fine. How many more can I get in here? This is actually quite a bit of eggs in here. Wow, I pulled just about the perfect amount. One left over. You want to make sure that the eggs are completely covered. So once you cover up that top egg, it's going to take it right to the top. And then you're just going to want to seal it off. And put your lid on. And that is all there is to preserving your eggs. Now, if you had a big 5-gallon bucket, you would just keep adding eggs to it until it was full, and you could cover the top layer of eggs with a good inch of solution and put a lid on it and set it aside, and you'll have eggs all winter long. All right, now that your eggs are preserved, you're going to move these into the storage area. And like we mentioned before, just a room temperature, the cooler the better, but just move them into storage. And the main thing is to just make sure that when you move them, if you've got a big bucket, let's say like I've got my 5-gallon bucket, and they are going to be down in the basement, I may keep the bucket up in the kitchen while I'm filling it. I may have, you know, I wouldn't fill it all the way to the top, but I may keep it in the kitchen while I put a couple layers of eggs in there. So I don't have to keep going down to the basement every time that I want to preserve some eggs. So when you do move it, just be really careful when you move it so that, you know, no eggs crack or shift. Just be real careful when you move it. That would be the case with any eggs. So when you're ready to use these, make sure that you wash them well, because you don't want any of this alkaline water to drip into your recipes. I've never had it happen to me, maybe because I've never had the solution drip into my eggs, but just like a drop or two of this solution could actually curdle your eggs. So you just want to wash them well and make sure, you know, that no solution hits your actual product that you're making. Now, if you're working with a bigger vessel and you maybe, let's just take my 5-gallon bucket for example, and I make enough solution. I don't really know how much solution needs to be in there because as you add eggs, it's going to go up. But I may half fill the bucket with solution, and as I'm adding eggs, I may get to a point where I'm like, I could add another layer or two of eggs, but there is no solution, you know, there's no more solution in here. Feel free to make a batch or two of the solution and just add right over the top. That's okay to add solution later on. You may notice that some of the solution has evaporated. In my big buckets, the lid really pops down. It's kind of hard to get it off and on. So I don't like to pop that lid all the way on and then have to keep prying it off every time I want to grab a dozen eggs. And so I'll just leave the lid kind of laying on top to where I can take it off and on easily. But if for some reason my solution, because it's not airtight, the only reason that wouldn't be a good idea is because some of the solution may evaporate, and you want that solution to be, you know, above, maybe an inch above your eggs. If you notice that it's starting to evaporate, just make some more solution and top it off, and that will be perfectly fine. All right, so that's all there is to water glassing eggs. You may have heard of water glassing eggs and thought it sounded like some big procedure that would be confusing or hard to do, but it is very, very easy, and it is so amazing to be able to go down to the basement in December when normally I'd be having to go to the store and buy store-bought eggs. Just go down to the basement, pull a dozen eggs out of the bucket, and when you crack them and use them, they are just as good as if the hen had just laid them. And they'll be like that for a good 8, 10, 12 months, even up to 2 years. So this is really a very unbelievable preservation technique that's so easy and so cheap and so quick. So if you want the exact directions, you want to read the blog post with all the information, go ahead and click the link below and it'll take you right into my blog where you can get all the information there. As well as I have, I'll leave you another link in the description below. I have written a PDF. It's free. It's a free cookbook, and it is our 12 favorite recipes using eggs. Because if you've got, hens in your yard and you have eggs coming in, you know how difficult it is during the spring months to use up all those eggs. And while yes, we can preserve them, there are a lot of those dirty eggs coming in as well. And so always trying to find recipes to use up eggs, something I'm always doing. So I have a very large collection of recipes using eggs, and I picked our very best ones that would be using the largest amounts of eggs, anywhere from 6 eggs to a dozen and a half at a time. And I wrote all those recipes down. I made a beautiful little cookbook, and it's free. So if you want to pick up that cookbook, go ahead and click the link below and you can get organized for using up all your eggs. Whether you're putting them in those recipes or you're water glassing them, you're not going to have a problem of having an overabundance of eggs sitting on your counter you don't know what to do with. So I'm glad that you joined me for this, and like I said, go ahead and subscribe and click that little bell, and we'll see you next week.